The humid jungle air clung to Dr. Samantha Chase like a wet shroud as she hacked through the dense undergrowth. Shafts of hazy sunlight filtered down through the canopy, casting ominous shadows across the forgotten temple ruins rising up before her. She had journeyed 3 grueling weeks into the remote wilds of Guatemala to find this ancient site, guided only by a faded map and local legends. According to the tales, a great evil had once reigned here, its darkness haunting the crumbling stones to this very day. As an archaeologist who had dedicated her life to studying ancient civilizations, Samantha was no stranger to remote locales or local superstitions. But something about the fear in the villagers' eyes when speaking of these ruins had sent a chill down her spine. Many believed that disturbing this cursed place would unleash a primordial evil. But Samantha needed to know the truth buried within these vines and shadows. Wiping the sweat from her brow, she studied the temple's weathered facade, tracing her fingers over the intricate carvings choked by moss and creeping ivy. Through the decay, she could make out depictions of twisted, snarling creatures and writhing human forms. A particular carving seized her attention, a hideous, winged entity with a jackal's head and serpentine limbs. The surrounding hieroglyphs were obscured, but the palpable menace radiating from the carving raised the hairs on Samantha's neck. What long-forgotten god or demon was memorialized here in stone? What nightmares had this jungle seen? Ignoring the dread knotting her stomach, Samantha squeezed through a crevice between the mossy blocks into the dark passage beyond. Her headlamp pierced through the stale air as she entered the main chamber. Intricate glyphs and images blanketed every surface, sending a chill down her spine. Many depictions were too weathered to discern, but she could make out skeletons, blood, ritual daggers, and what looked like humans being burned alive. Samantha shuddered. Had the ancient people here really made such horrific sacrifices? At the chamber's center sat a massive sarcophagus crafted from seamless black stone, unlike any in the ruins. The carved face upon its lid was eerily lifelike, its visage humanoid yet disturbingly inhuman. Jagged teeth framed a snarl beneath empty, elongated eye sockets. This was clearly the crypt of someone or something of great importance. Samantha ran her fingers along the sarcophagus edge, tracing the glyphs circling the rim. She could make out warnings of angering a slumbering god-king named Akoro, who would one day reclaim his kingdom. Samantha's heart quickened. Was this the cursed entity from the legends? Had he truly been real? She had to know what lay inside this ominous tomb. Gripping a crowbar tightly, Samantha wedged it beneath the lid. The stone ground reluctantly as she strained against its tremendous weight. Her muscles burned as the lid inched open with an ear-splitting scrape. Foul, centuries-old air burst out in a cold gust, assaulting her senses. Samantha gagged on the smell of decay and smoke. Peering into the shadowy sarcophagus, she cried out. It was empty. Samantha stood frozen as her mind reeled in confusion and relief. Had the sarcophagus ever held the body of a forgotten ruler? Had it already been looted long ago? Questions without answers spun through her mind. As her eyes adjusted to the dim interior, she noticed something nestled in the corner atop a bed of dirt, a tiny onyx figurine no longer than her palm. Samantha carefully lifted it, squinting in the gloom. It depicted the same jackal-headed winged entity from the temple carvings, carved with exquisite lifelike details. Its jeweled eyes seemed almost alive. Samantha shivered, hastily stuffing the statuette into her pack. Eager to leave the oppressive chamber behind, she rushed to the crevice leading back outside, skin prickling as if unseen eyes watched her every move. Had coming here been a mistake? She shook her head, laughing nervously to herself. It was just superstitious nonsense infecting her thoughts. She would study the glyphs, bring proof back to the university, and shed light on this culture lost to time. Samantha took one last look around the tomb, gaze lingering on the empty sarcophagus with its grim, sneering face. For a heartbeat, she was certain its eyes had followed her. She blinked in the dim light. Ridiculous. It was just a carving. This was an important archaeological find, not some cursed temple. Ignoring the growing sense of unease coiling within, Samantha slipped back through the crevice into bright jungle sunlight, leaving the shadows behind. She had work to do. Samantha stared with bloodshot eyes at the blurring hieroglyphics lining her office walls. She had carved rubbings covering every inch, desperate to decode their secrets. For 3 days since leaving the jungle temple, she had pored over the symbols with maddeningly little success. The few glyphs she had managed to interpret spoke of ritual sacrifice, eternal life, and summoning entities from realms beyond. But the most common motif was the repeated image of the jackal-headed winged god identified as Akaro. Samantha glanced anxiously at the onyx statuette of the entity now occupying her desk. She still had no clear answers about what it represented. Amidst the endless repetitious glyphs, one section stood out, a map depicting 3 distinct relics in varying locations across the world. Samantha's eyes widened in realization. These had to be important ritual artifacts. Perhaps they were even the key to understanding Akaro. Newly invigorated, Samantha delved into researching the relic's origins. Scraps of legends emerged, referring to a cursed jewel, an ancient dagger, and a spiked scepter once used in dark rituals by an unnamed cult. Samantha cross-referenced their descriptions, her heart racing faster as details aligned with carvings in the temple ruins. She was onto something big, she could feel it. Late into the night, Samantha puzzled over the relic's locations on the map glyphs. If her translations were accurate, the jeweled artifact rested somewhere in Central America. In fact, it seemed buried beneath a site not terribly far from the jungle temple. A flight and a half-day's hike would get her there. Travel arrangements raced through Samantha's mind until exhaustion finally forced her to collapse into bed. As she drifted to sleep, Samantha thought she heard faint whispers. Disembodied voices speaking in a strange tongue echoed at the edge of hearing. She sat bolt upright, glancing wildly around the dark room. Silence. Just the AC humming. She shook her head. "I need a vacation after this." Samantha awoke the next morning feeling watched. Paranoia lingered as she packed field equipment and supplies for the Central American expedition. She tried to ignore the prickling sensation on her neck, blaming it on too much time spent in dusty ruins deciphering hieroglyphic threats. Laughing tensely at her own foolishness, she grabbed her bags and departed, eager for answers that lay ahead. 2 flights, a rickety bus ride, and a grueling uphill hike later, Samantha arrived at the overgrown valley site pinpointed on the temple map. Crouched below tangled vines and roots, she could glimpse weathered limestone blocks, part of some buried structure. This was it. Samantha cleared away the vegetation, revealing an entryway carved with a familiar winged figure. She was on the right track. Crawling into the claustrophobic passage beyond, the air grew heavy with earthy age. Samantha clicked on her headlamp, illuminating a long staircase descending at a precarious angle into the earth. She felt the weight of ages pressing down as she descended into the chilling depths. The stairs emptied into a phosphorescent cavern with a glowing subterranean pool, but Samantha barely noticed, eyes fixated on the imposing stone edifice rising from the cave floor. An ancient stepped pyramid. Beneath the anomaly's apex, she glimpsed a dark doorway leading inside. After checking the stability, Samantha ascended the crumbling steps. At the top, she gazed upon a scene from a nightmare. A blood-caked altar lay surrounded by piles of human skulls, while glyphs depicting ritual sacrifice covered the walls. In a niche above the altar rested a flawless red gemstone the size of a heart, pulsing with inner light like a smoldering ember. The cursed jewel. Samantha's moment of fascination was shattered by a panicked male voice echoing up the stairwell. "Hello? Please, is someone there? I seem to be rather lost." Rushing to the top of the stairs, Samantha saw a middle-aged man in a rumpled suit standing at the cavern pool's edge. Despite his disheveled appearance, he had a gentle face framed by round glasses. But how had he possibly found this remote place? Noticing Samantha, the man's eyes lit up with relief. "Oh, praise the Lord, please. Could you help me?" He explained he was Father Caleb, a Catholic missionary who had awakened alone deep in the jungle after experiencing dreams of a glowing gemstone that seemed to call out to him. Samantha guided the confused priest out of the cavern, bombarded by his eager questions. He was oddly fascinated by her archaeological work researching ancient religions. Caleb's vision matched the jewel's location too perfectly to be coincidence, but how? Samantha's logical mind spun as she led them back to her camp. Over a crackling fire, Caleb shared his side of things. He had never intended to wind up in the Central American wilderness. Until 3 weeks ago, Caleb had lived at the Vatican, serving as a priest and perform exorcisms. But he left that life after a failed exorcism resulted in the death of a young girl he'd been trying to save. Plagued by traumatic visions ever since, Caleb embarked on a sabbatical, letting God guide his path, which had somehow led to this jungle. Samantha listened politely while analyzing the facts. Hallucinations aside, Caleb clearly had knowledge of religious rituals and obscure lore. His expertise could prove useful with the relics. And if she was honest, having another person around steadied her lingering anxiety over the site's unknown dangers. She offered to hire Caleb as a research consultant. Initially reluctant, Caleb became eager when Samantha revealed details of the relics, Akaro, and the temple ruins. He sensed a growing evil presence seeking to re-emerge into the world. Though privately skeptical of mystical threats, Samantha couldn't deny needing Caleb's guidance. They had a flight to catch in the morning to retrieve the next relic. Caleb agreed to join her quest for answers. As dusk fell, Samantha noticed the priest sitting before a fire, head bowed in prayer. She thought she heard him murmuring in Latin, but caught a strange guttural undertone. Caleb glanced up, smiling innocently. "Just seeking God's guidance on this path?" Samantha nodded politely. She must have misheard. That night, Samantha tossed in her tent, dreaming of stifling darkness. A haunting, inhuman roar erupted as a colossal, winged silhouette with burning eyes loomed closer. Samantha screamed awake. Peering outside, she glimpsed Caleb kneeling near the glowing red jewel wrapped in cloth, chanting softly with arms raised to the stars. Dark eyes like polished obsidian reflected the firelight. They followed her every move until she retreated into her tent, pulse racing. Samantha sat awake until dawn, clutching an iron archaeological pickaxe for security. She had to get away from this oppressive place and its influence on her mind. Come sunrise, they would retrieve the jewel and be on a plane to Europe. All would be fine once free of this jungle. She just had to keep it together a little longer. The following evening, Samantha and Caleb arrived in a quiet fishing village in Estonia on the Baltic coast. Samantha wasted no time arranging a rental boat. Eager to reach the relic's reported location on a mist-shrouded island before night fell. Caleb seemed oddly distant since the flight, responding in murmurs or biblical quotes, always clutching his leather briefcase. Samantha decided the aging priest must be fatigued from their travels. She prayed this would be a smoother relic recovery. As their small boat cut through choppy surf towards the island, Caleb broke his introspection, reconsidering Samantha's offer of payment for his expertise. "Riches of the physical world matter not, but should your purpose align with mine, I will lend my talents gladly." Before Samantha could respond, the boat shuddered as its hull scraped rock. They had arrived. Looming through the mist rose the crumbling facade of an ancient castle. Skulls and crossbones adorned the weathered iron portcullis, below which a rusted metal door hung partially ajar. Samantha felt Caleb staring eagerly past her as she reached to open it. This place already unsettled her, but they had come this far. She pulled the screeching door outward and stepped into waiting shadows. Caleb followed closely, remaining hunched and vigilant as they descended stone steps into the icy catacombs below. Samantha's breath misted before her as they navigated the labyrinth of snaking corridors. Dripping water echoing in the distance was the only sound. Even their steps seemed muffled by an otherworldly silence. After an hour without any sign of the dagger, Samantha leaned wearily against a cold metal torch sconce jutting from the wall. Suddenly the sconce twisted beneath her hand with a grinding click. A rasping stone-on-stone rumble broke the silence as a hidden section of wall slowly receded, revealing a spiral staircase descending farther below. Exchanging an apprehensive glance with Caleb, Samantha cautiously led the way down into the abyss. The air grew warm and heavy with decay as they reached the bottom. Their flashlights revealed a vast ritual chamber of some kind. Strange symbols coated the walls and floor, trailing to a raised stone altar at the room's heart. Upon the altar rested an ornate dagger with a jet-black blade. The second relic! Caleb tensed with excitement and what almost seemed like recognition. Samantha cautiously lifted the ceremonial dagger, noting its unusual weight and intricate carvings adorning the handle. This had been created for some dark purpose long ago. She carefully wrapped it and placed the relic in her pack. "We should leave this place. I got what we came for." Caleb lingered a moment, staring intently around the ritual chamber before slowly turning to follow her out. Passing through the catacombs, Samantha quickened her pace, skin crawling as though the cool, damp walls watched their every movement. She could have sworn the twisting passages shifted subtly as they retraced their steps. But soon they reached the entrance stairs without incident. Samantha breathed deep the salty air, safe. As the small boat motored away from the island, Samantha watched Caleb from the corner of her eye. He sat whispering to the wrapped dagger like a parent to a child. Unease stirred in her mind. The man was clearly unstable, yet his knowledge was undeniably helpful. She would keep him around just a little longer until the third relic was found, then she could continue her research in peace. Caleb interrupted her planning. "You're a worthy ally to our cause," he spoke as if addressing a crowd. "Together, we shall pierce the veil and restore what was forgotten." Samantha shivered despite the mild evening air. She changed course for the mainland docks. It was getting late and she needed rest before their flight to Scotland. Soon this would be over. But as Samantha settled into her hotel room and switched off the lights, a guttural chanting drifted through the walls. The sound circled her room before gradually receding. She huddled on the bed, clutching the iron pickaxe. Maybe a priest wasn't the best choice to hire after all. The trip's stresses must be getting to Caleb, unless they were getting to her as well. Samantha squeezed her eyes shut and waited for morning.